Preface. Ethereal Hollywood is a world reconfigured from the golden age of Hollywood, where the legendary stars are not just memories, but immortal archetypes, still living in their own parallel alternative reality. Familiar history is not duplicated but flexible and constantly revisioning itself along diverse pathways. Time and space are also more fluid and less binding. And what has been called magic works in odd and unusual ways, producing scenarios from the silly to the surreal. And since these stories are in an alternative world or dimension, there are variances from real-world facts, such as the relationship between characters, studios, events. This is a fluid world where history flows in unexpected directions. These are audiobooks with imagery synced to the narrative as much as possible, serving as quasi-storyboards to give a rough visual dimension to the stories. Book 9 On the Road with Hope, Crosby, Miranda and Velez. By Arnold Kalnitsky. Who's the poor sap this time? Bob Hope leaned back in his studio chair, polishing his cufflink with a handkerchief. Another jungle princess? Or maybe a desert queen? Bing Crosby chuckled, adjusting his tie in the mirror. South America, Bob. Think tangos and big hats. The boss wants it spicy. And cheap. He winked. Good neighbor policy, and all that. A stack of headshots slid across the cluttered desk. Two faces stood out. One woman beamed beneath a towering fruit hat, her smile wide and infectious. The other smoldered with dark eyes, a rose tucked behind her ear like a dare. Studio lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows on the scripts piled high. Outside, a car backfired, making Bob jump. He picked up the first photo. Miranda sings like a bird, dances like her shoes are on fire. He tapped the second. Velez, firecracker. Heard she throws ashtrays when the director yells, cut. Bing raised an eyebrow. Ashtrays. Bob shrugged. Or telephones. Depends on the scene. He dropped the photos. Either way, Dorothy's shoes won't be filled easy. Bing leaned closer, lowering his voice even though the office was empty. Miranda brings the samba. Tourists eat that fruit hat thing up. He mimed balancing a tower on his head. But Velez, she's got heat. Real Latin Spitfire. The papers call her the Mexican Spitfire, for a reason. A slow grin spread across his face. Think of the posters. Outside, a sudden burst of Spanish guitar drifted through the open window, followed by laughter. Bob drummed his fingers on the desk. One sells tickets. The other might sell tickets and get us punched by a jealous gaucho. He paused, eyeing the smoldering gaze in Lupe's headshot. Or set the soundstage on fire. Bing stood, straightening his jacket. Let's meet him. See who survives lunch at the Brown Derby without causing an international incident. He tossed Bob his hat. You bring the aspirin. I have a feeling we're gonna need it. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving the two faces staring up from the desk, one crowned in bananas, the other daring them with a rose. The next afternoon, sunlight streamed into the studio commissary as Carmen Miranda arrived in a whirlwind of clacking bracelets and a laugh like shaken maracas. She kissed both men on the cheek before sitting, her miniature fruit hat bobbing precariously. Boys. So exciting, no. Her energy crackled, filling the booth. She spoke rapidly, hands dancing, describing Rio carnivals with infectious glee. Bob nudged Bing under the table. Ticket sales. Lupe Velez entered 10 minutes later, a sleek black dress hugging her curves. She offered a cool handshake, her dark eyes assessing them like a chess master. Her voice was low, smoky. Hope, Crosby. She ordered coffee, black. Ignoring the menu. Conversation was sharp, witty, punctuated by her sudden, throaty laugh. When Bing mentioned the tango sequence, her eyes flashed. I don't do cute sambas, querido. I do passion. She leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. I hear the script needs more bite. Bob watched the two women subtly size each other up over the sugar bowl. Miranda's vibrant charm filled the room, but Velez radiated a simmering intensity that promised fireworks on celluloid. Bing scribbled, "Box office," on a napkin, sliding it to Bob. Bob added a question mark, then drew a tiny ashtray beside it. The decision hung heavy, charged like the air before a storm. Outside, a studio trumpet player hit a sour note, sharp and jarring. Suddenly, Lupe's coffee cup clattered onto its saucer. "This script," she declared, tapping the draft Bing had slid her way. "It treats your Latina like a spicy prop. A rumba between pratfalls." Her polished fingernail jabbed the page. "My character has the depth of a puddle. Where is her fire? Her reason?" Carmen's smile tightened, but her eyes stayed bright. "Ah, but querida," she countered, her bracelets chiming, "sometimes joy is the depth. The people want to dance, to forget their troubles. Not everything needs teeth." Bob leaned forward, sensing the opening. "So, you'd want rewrites, Lupe." He kept his tone light, professional. Bing subtly nudged his ankle under the table, dangerous ground. Lupe met Bob's gaze, unblinking. "Rewrites. See. Or perhaps, improvisation." A slow, challenging smile touched her lips. "I give good improv. Ask the last director who told me to be more decorative." The memory of a flying telephone seemed to hang in the sudden silence. Carmen clapped her hands, breaking the tension with a sound like castanets. "Enough business. We are artists, no. Let us show these boys the difference." Before anyone could react, she was on her feet, pulling Bing up. "You, Bing Crosby, you sing, we dance." She snapped her fingers towards the startled pianist in the corner. Lupe watched, one elegant eyebrow arched. Then, with a fluid grace that surprised them, she rose too, extending a hand towards Bob. Her voice dropped to a smoky whisper. "Come, Guero, let's see if you can handle a real tango, or just the comedy version." The commissary fell silent, every eye on the two stars and the two very nervous comedians. Miranda launched into a whirlwind of samba steps, hips swaying, her fruit hat miraculously staying put as she pulled Bing into a dizzying spin. His smooth baritone faltered for a second before finding the rhythm, a grin spreading across his face despite himself. Laughter erupted from the crew tables. But Lupe moved differently. She stepped close to Bob, one hand firm on his shoulder, the other clasping his hand with surprising strength. "Follow me," she murmured. Her steps were slow, deliberate, and intense. Bob stumbled, trying for a pratfall, but Lupe held him upright, her dark eyes locking onto his. "No jokes now," she breathed. "Feel it." The air crackled between them, thick with an unexpected heat. The contrast was electric. Miranda radiated pure, unadulterated joy, her infectious energy making Bing loosen up, his movements becoming surprisingly fluid. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he was laughing, swept along by her vibrant current. Lupe, however, commanded the space around her and Bob. Every dip, every sharp turn of her head, every press of her hand was charged with smoldering intent. Bob, usually the master of the quip, was silent, focused, genuinely trying to match her steps. A low murmur ran through the watching crowd. They weren't just seeing performers, they were seeing two very different kinds of fire. The music swelled to a finish. Miranda ended with a flourish and a kiss on Bing's cheek, breathless and beaming. Lupe held Bob in a deep, dramatic dip, his tie brushing the floor. She held the pose for a heartbeat longer than necessary, her gaze challenging, then pulled him smoothly upright. Silence hung for a moment before applause broke out. Bob straightened his jacket, slightly flushed. Bing wiped his brow, chuckling. The two actresses exchanged a look, Carmen's bright and triumphant, Lupe's cool and assessing. The decision hadn't gotten any easier. If anything, the choice now felt like picking between dynamite and a volcano. Bob cleared his throat, smoothing his rumpled sleeve. Well, ladies, that was educational. He shot a sideways glance at Bing, whose expression was carefully neutral. Bing just gave a small, noncommittal nod. The commissary chatter resumed, louder now, buzzing with speculation. Carmen chattered happily about the rhythm, her bracelets jingling. Lupe sat back down, sipping her cold coffee, her eyes never leaving the two men. A studio page rushed in, skidding to a halt beside their booth. "Mr. Crosby," urgent call from David Butler. The interruption was sharp, a splash of cold water. Bing excused himself with a polite nod. Bob watched him go, then turned back to the women. The easy camaraderie of the dance evaporated instantly. Lupe leaned forward, her voice low and intense. "You saw it. The difference. My way, it has truth. Fire." Carmen's smile didn't waver, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "My way has joy, querido. The world needs joy right now. Especially your world." She tapped the script meaningfully. Bob felt the weight settle back onto his shoulders, heavier than before. He looked from the radiant, expectant face beneath the fruit hat to the smoldering intensity across the table. Outside, the trumpet player tried again, hitting the note perfectly this time, a clear, bright sound that somehow made the silence inside the booth feel even louder. He reached for his water glass, his hand steady but his mind racing. The real performance had just begun. Lupe didn't blink. "Joy is cheap, amigo. Easy. What I offer," she tapped the script again, her nail clicking sharply, "is unforgettable." Carmen's laugh tinkled, but it held an edge now. "Unforgettable headaches. Or unforgettable box office." She spread her hands, bracelets shimmering. "Look around. People are smiling. That is the magic." Bob saw Bing returning, his face unreadable as he slipped back into the booth, the interruption hanging like unspoken news. Bing leaned in, his voice a low murmur meant only for Bob. "Butler's pushing. Wants a decision by Friday." He paused, glancing at the two actresses. He also heard about the demonstration. Lupe's eyebrow arched higher. Carmen simply smiled wider, adjusting her hat. "Of course he did. Good news travels fast, no?" Bing met Bob's eyes, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them, the unvarnished reality of contracts, budgets, and the delicate politics of pleasing both the studio and the State Department. Bob pushed his chair back slightly, the legs scraping on the linoleum. "Ladies," he began, forcing his trademark grin, though it felt tight. "You've given us a hell of a show. Truly." He gestured vaguely towards the commissary door. "Now, if you'll excuse us, Bing and I have a script conference." With aspirin. He stood, Bing following suit. The two women watched them go, Carmen still beaming, Lupe's expression inscrutable. As they pushed through the swinging doors into the studio hallway, the sound of the commissary, the clatter of dishes, the buzz of conversation, was abruptly cut off, leaving only the echo of their own footsteps and the impossible choice stretching ahead. The corridor was cool and dim after the bright commissary. Bing pulled a folded telegram from his pocket, handing it to Bob without a word. The studio head's message was blunt: "Miranda equals safe bet. Velez equals dynamite. Your call. But remember, the neighbors are watching." Bob crumpled the paper, shoving it into his pocket. "Safe bet," he muttered. Unforgettable headaches." Bing sighed, leaning against the cool plaster wall. "Carmen makes 'em laugh. Lupe makes 'em feel. Both sell tickets. But only one of 'em makes the front office sweat bullets." A sudden burst of Spanish guitar drifted from a nearby sound stage, sharp, rhythmic, and alive. It was followed by a woman's rich, full-throated laugh. Both men froze, listening. It was impossible to tell if it was Carmen's infectious joy or Lupe's defiant challenge echoing through the studio walls. Bob rubbed his temples. Friday, he groaned. Bing pushed off the wall, adjusting his tie. Better find that aspirin, Bob. And maybe a fire extinguisher. He started walking towards the exit, leaving Bob alone in the shadowed corridor, the phantom music and the weight of two futures pressing in. Outside, the California sun beat down, relentless. The next morning, Bob found Lupe Velez rehearsing alone on stage 3. She wasn't dancing, she was pacing, script in hand, her low voice slicing through the empty space as she delivered her lines, not with Dorothy Lamour's purr, but with a raw, simmering intensity that transformed the comic dialogue into something dangerous and thrilling. She stopped abruptly, sensing his presence. "You see, Guerrero?" she asked, her eyes locking onto his. "This is not just a banana joke." She threw the script onto a nearby chair. "This is a woman." The challenge hung in the dusty air, stark and undeniable. Meanwhile, across the lot, Carmen Miranda's laughter bubbled from the costume department. Bob peeked in to see her surrounded by seamstresses, draped in vibrant silks, her fruit hat casting a whimsical shadow. She was teaching them a quick samba step, her movements effortless, her smile wide enough to light the room. "See, Joy," she called out, spotting Bob. "It is the best costume, no?" Her energy was a tangible force, a warm wave pushing back the studio's usual cynicism. Bob offered a weak smile, feeling the impossible choice tighten like a vice. Later, in the writer's room, Bing pointed at two mock-up posters tacked to the wall. One showed Carmen, beaming beneath her hat, Bob and Bing grinning goofily beside her, pure, uncomplicated fun. The other featured Lupe, smoldering in a low-cut gown, her gaze intense, one hand possessively on Bob's shoulder while Bing looked slightly wary in the background, dangerous, alluring, unforgettable. The silence stretched, thick with the unspoken question. Outside, a jackhammer started up, its insistent rhythm mirroring the ticking clock. Friday loomed. Bob flipped a coin absently, catching it. Heads. Safe. Tails. Fire. It landed, shimmering, on the polished table. Tails. He didn't pick it up. "Forget the coin," he muttered, pushing away from the table. "Let's see what happens when they share a scene." He grabbed a revised page, one where the rivals confronted each other over a stolen map. "Get 'em both in here. Now." Bing raised an eyebrow but reached for the phone. The air crackled with anticipation. 10 minutes later, Carmen swept in, radiating sunshine. "Rehearsal. Maravilloso." Lupe followed, a panther in heels, her eyes immediately finding the script pages. Bob handed them out. "Page 42. You're fighting over the MacGuffin. Dorothy's old scene." Carmen scanned it, humming. Lupe read it once, slowly, then looked up, a slow, dangerous smile spreading. "This," she purred, tapping the page, "I can work with." Carmen's smile tightened, competitive fire flickering beneath the glitter. "Let us begin, Sim." They started tentatively, Carmen playing the charm, Lupe the simmering threat. Then Lupe snatched the prop map. "You think your smiles buy everything, Gatina," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. Carmen didn't flinch. Her laugh was sharp, brittle. "Better smiles than snarls, querida." She lunged, not for the map, but for Lupe's wrist. The contact was electric. The scripted dialogue vanished. Improvisation crackled. Insults in rapid Spanish, a shove, Carmen's hat knocked askew. Bob and Bing watched, utterly forgotten, as raw, untamed chemistry exploded between them, comedy and drama colliding in a way that felt terrifyingly real and utterly compelling. The answer wasn't one or the other. It was the spark flying between them. Bob stepped forward, snapping his fingers. "Cut. That's gold." He looked at Bing, whose earlier neutrality had dissolved into stunned fascination. The actresses broke apart, breathing hard. Lupe straightened her dress, a fierce pride in her eyes. Carmen adjusted her hat, her usual sunny smile replaced by a look of fierce satisfaction. The tension wasn't resolved, it was weaponized. Bing picked up the discarded script page. "We rewrite," he stated, a slow grin spreading. "We make them rivals. Real rivals." He looked at Lupe. "You get your fire." Then at Carmen. "You get your joy." His gaze shifted to Bob. "And we get the hell out of the way." The studio trumpet player, practicing nearby, hit a perfect, soaring note, clear, triumphant, and utterly unexpected. It echoed through the cavernous stage, hanging in the air like a promise.